After a turbulent national election yesterday, marred by violence and boycotts, vote counting is now underway in Libya. So far, the country's liberal Islamic coalition is claiming an overall lead, contradicting predictions that hardline Islamist parties would sweep the poll. Well, more on where Libya now stands with Richard Spencer. He's a founder and co-editor of the online magazine AlternativeRight.com. Richard, when this revolution began, yesterday's election could only be dreamed of. Is this really now the beginning of a new Libya?
Well, I'm afraid it is the beginning of a new Libya, and that is a Libya that is weak, that is marred by chaotic infighting and sometimes tribal loyalties expressing themselves in the democratic process. And it's a Libya that no longer has a strongman who, in his own small way, was actually willing to challenge the Washington consensus. So there is going to be a new Libya. It's going to be a weak Libya, and that is what the United States wanted.
It's certainly been a weak Libya while the NTC has been in power, and many say it's lost its credibility and its time has run out. Do you not think, though, an elected General National Congress would actually change anything?
No. I think we're going to have a democracy, much like we have a democracy in Iraq or in Afghanistan. There are going to be very ineffective leaders. There's going to be a lot of these things that we Westerners don't always understand about these countries that we try to re-engineer. These tribal loyalties, religious divisions, which we, again, don't really understand, are going to affect the political process. And it's going to be an ineffective, powerless regime. But again, that seemed to be the main point of the invasion. I don't think we should fool ourselves that Washington invaded or bombed, attacked Libya and installed a democracy in order to do the Libyan people and the world a favor. They wanted to weaken Libya, and they wanted to take out a man who was challenging the Washington consensus.
Do you think it's too soon also for voters to get involved in party politics? After all, nobody's able to be to vote for, over 40 years, and it's almost too soon, and obviously too unstable to have something like this happening right now?
Well, that's quite true. I think people certainly have not voted for some 6 decades or something like this. But again, I think what's important to see here is the ways in which Washington is willing to work with people who we might think of as thugs or Islamicists or so on and so forth, that they will actually do things that benefit those groups. And it's a kind of divide and rule strategy, in the sense that a decade ago, we had Saddam Hussein as a strong secular nationalist leader. He was taken out. The people who were actually empowered by that were Shia religious leaders. If you look at Libya, we were working with Islamicist rebels to attack Gaddafi. So, the United States is kind of willing to work with these thugs so long as some basic tenets are maintained, and that is, A, that the oil must flow, and B, that it must be denominated in dollars, and I guess C, that you don't have anyone that is really going to challenge Washington.
Of course, a fear of, if those thugs, as you call it, and many of those who are against this election are coming from the East, if they are supported and they actually turn against what a supposedly unified government, do you think that perhaps they could pursue independence and that we really could see the country now splitting into two?
That's a possibility, that we would have created a civil war by taking out a strongman. In a way, it was only someone like Gaddafi that could have held that country together. A lot of people said the same thing about Iraq. I remember there was even talk, I think Joe Biden put up a bill of some sort about dividing Iraq according to religious lines. There'd be a Sunni and a Shia, and I think a Kurdish section as well. But again, I think a more likely scenario is that Libya is just going to be caught in this swamp of chaotic infighting democracy, and that it's just going to simply be a weak country where there's not really effective leadership, maybe even a little bit like Lebanon, where you just have these ethnic, religious disputes that are never resolved. It's just kind of an unhappy political system. And again, to go back to my theme, a weak country.
Richard, thanks for your thoughts. Richard Spencer, founder and co-editor of the online magazine AlternativeRight.com. Thanks for joining us live there.
Thank you.